Trump's deals and dollars this week are adding up. Just hours earlier in Qatar, acting as the U.S. Armed Forces Commander-in-Chief, Trump stopped at Al Udeid Air Base to speak with troops, one day after signing a series of agreements with the state's emir.
We signed an agreement for Qatar to purchase $42 billion worth of the finest American military hardware, including THAAD missile batteries.
Trump also announced Qatar will invest $10 billion in the coming years for base upgrades.
The goal of Donald Trump's trip to the Middle East is to generate business for the United States. His trip to Saudi Arabia, generating $600 billion in the defense, AI, and other key sectors. And in Qatar, agreements were signed, the White House says, could generate business in excess of $1.2 trillion for both nations.
We're not going to be making any nuclear dust in Iran, and we've been strong. I want them to succeed. I want them to end up being a great country, frankly, but they can't have a nuclear weapon. That's the only thing. And I think we're getting close to maybe doing a deal.
And on Air Force One to Abu Dhabi, the last stop on the Mideast tour, Trump spoke to reporters about Vladimir Putin's involvement in Russia-Ukraine negotiations.
I don't believe anything's going to happen, whether you like it or not, until he and I get together, but we're going to have to get it solved because too many people are dying. You're an amazing country. You're a rich country. You can have your choice, but I know you'll never leave my side. And you know the special relationship that we have and our country has. We have now, I think, substantially over $10 trillion of investment. And now when I add the $1.4 trillion, we easily break that number. We really appreciate your confidence and an investment. That's your biggest investment that you've ever made. And we really appreciate it. And we're going to treat you very, as you should be, magnificently. And you're a magnificent man, and it's an honor to be with you. Two countries also agreed to create a path for UAE to buy some of the world's most advanced AI semiconductors from American companies, a very big contract. This will generate billions and billions of dollars in business and accelerate the UAE's plans to become a really major player in artificial intelligence. So it's a great tribute to the job you've done here. I'm very proud to be representing the United States of America, and thank you all for being here.
Donald Trump welcomed to Abu Dhabi by UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan for the third and final stop on his Mideast tour.
Is this beautiful?
As Trump toured the Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque, one of the largest in the world, he removed his shoes as is customary. To facilitate his visit, the mosque was closed to the public for the first time ever in its history. But Trump hopes to make history with the deals he brings back to the United States. On Thursday, the United Arab Emirates reaffirmed its commitment to invest $1.4 trillion in the fields of artificial intelligence, technology, and energy in exchange for access to advanced American microchips. But for now, Trump's focusing on seeing Gulf allies investing in American companies while also strengthening ties. In the case of Abu Dhabi, Trump's visit is long overdue, marking the first by a U.S. president in 17 years.
And to the last stop, President Trump visited the UAE. Just like in Qatar, Trump received a massive traditional welcome that involved women lining up and flipping their hair. Wouldn't it be something if this hair is 100% natural, like zero product? Anyway, in Abu Dhabi, President Trump announced over $200 billion in commercial deals between the U.S. and the United Arab Emirates, bringing the total investment agreements in the Middle East tour to over $2 trillion. Just like in Qatar, Boeing and GE Aerospace secured a $14.5 billion investment from Etihad Airways to buy 28 787 and 777X aircraft. Emirates Global Aluminum will invest over $4 billion in a smelter project in Oklahoma to strengthen the critical mineral supply chains. RTX is set to partner with Emirates Global Aluminum and UAE's Tawazun Council on a pioneering gallium project that will stabilize supply in the American markets. ExxonMobil, Occidental Petroleum, and EOG Resources are partnering with the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company for extended oil and gas production valued at $60 billion. The UAE promised to import 500,000 NVIDIA chips annually as it is poised to become an AI superpower. The chips will support national AI infrastructure, including data centers and next-generation applications across public and private sectors. 100,000 chips would go to G42, an Abu Dhabi-based firm backed by sovereign wealth fund Mubadala and U.S. private equity firm Silver Lake. The rest would be split between American companies like Microsoft and Oracle, which are also exploring Gulf data center expansions. The deal, still in draft form, would run through to 2027 and could extend to 2030. It includes a condition that for every data center G42 builds in the UAE, it must build one in the US. The chips could include NVIDIA's Blackwell and Rubin GPUs, which are more powerful than the Hopper line. Qualcomm is expanding its global footprints through partnerships with ADIO. A new global engineering data center in Abu Dhabi is set to focus on AI, data centers, and industrial Internet of Things, advancing the region's digital transformation. Amazon Web Services, and the UAE Cybersecurity Council have launched a sovereign cloud launchpad to accelerate the adoption of cloud services in the UAE. The deals with the UAE promote investment and innovation across technology, defense, energy, and critical minerals. The AI agreements include the UAE committing to finance massive data centers in the U.S. The agreements also include security alliances that protect American infrastructure. According to the Atlantic Council, this is by far the greatest U.S. president visit to the region. The partnership with the UAE is significant thanks to the achievement of the Abraham Accords signed during President Trump's first term.
After decades of division and conflict, September 15, 2020 was a historic day for peace. President Donald J. Trump brokered the signing of 2 peace agreements between Israel and Arab states, the first in more than a quarter century. They were between Israel and the United Arab Emirates and between Israel and Bahrain. These 2 agreements normalized relations between these nations, establishing regional peace built upon shared interests, mutual respect, and friendship. 5 weeks later, the United States brokered yet a 3rd peace agreement, this time between Israel and Sudan. Collectively known as the Abraham Accords, through these agreements, each country recognizes the importance of strengthening peace in the Middle East and around the world through mutual understanding and respect for human dignity and freedom. They also promote interfaith and intercultural dialogue in order to advance a culture of peace through cooperation. They acknowledge that the best way to address challenges is through cooperation and dialogue, and the importance of tolerance and respect for every person. And finally, they call for an end to radicalization and conflict by supporting science, art, medicine, and commerce to inspire humankind, maximize human potential, and bring nations closer together. Through the Abraham Accords, Israel, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Sudan are setting aside their differences and pursuing long-lasting peace in the region. They are now establishing embassies, exchanging ambassadors, and cooperating as partners on a variety of issues, including tourism, trade, healthcare, and security. The Abraham Accords are a monumental step in creating more opportunities for establishing peace, prosperity, and stability in the Middle East.
Today we are hopeful. The signs are there. And we're hopeful for a comprehensive peace agreement. We're having conversations with the Iranians. There are multiple interlocutors who are reaching out to us, and I think that they're ready. That's my strong sense.
The conditions that were there in 2020 when President Trump and Jared Kushner and I and a few others negotiated the Abraham Accords, those conditions are there today. Very strong America, very strong Israel, rock-solid connection and alliance between Israel and America, and a weak Iran. That's where we were in 2020. We had Iran on their heels with backbreaking sanctions. Biden came in and he gave it away. I mean, he gave the mullahs, hundreds of millions of dollars. He turned his back on Israel. He made America weak, and the Abraham Accords, not surprisingly, went nowhere. But now we're back to that same place. We have a very strong alliance, and Iran is weak. And I would expect, watch Steve Witkoff. He's very talented. I would watch the Abraham Accords closely. I think they will expand to a number of likely and less likely Muslim nations in the region.
Why is President Trump so invested in making sure that Israel drops this prosecution against Benjamin Netanyahu?
Well, in the proxies, Trace, look, Hamas they're still inflicting pain, but they're almost gone. Hezbollah's been decapitated. The Assad regime in Syria is gone. Syria is having talks with Israel for the first time in 25 years. The Houthis are not messing with us anymore. So, Iran can yell death to America, but no one else is joining them. They're increasingly isolated, and I think that gets us to a good place. Now, with President Trump and Netanyahu, look, they just went through a war together, right? They each staked their political capital. They staked their place in history on the outcome of these 12 days in June. They looked each other in the eye. They said, can you deliver what we need? And each performed flawlessly. And now, the president says to Bibi, I'll talk to you in a couple of days. And he says, well, I'm a little jammed up. I got to sit in court and get cross-examined for 6 hours. And I think that's what prompted the president to say, you got to be kidding. I mean, you're running this incredible operation, and you're being dragged into court. And of course, the president knows better than anybody how the weaponization of the justice system could work. He sees the same thing in Israel.
Yesterday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel's operation against Iran has opened up more opportunities for them. Quote, first and foremost, to rescue the hostages and defeat Hamas, and also broad regional possibilities.
President Trump continuing to call for a ceasefire in Gaza and for a return of all hostages, adding that more countries could be joining the Abraham Accords.
Has any other country suggested to you recently, as a result of this, that they want to join the Abraham Accords?
Yes. So we have some really great countries in there right now, and I think we're going to start loading them up because Iran was the primary problem.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has suggested Syria could also be one of those countries joining in.
Iran is going to have discussions, and they're very clever negotiators. And they just announced at the UN that they will enrich uranium no matter what international pressure happens, and they will do it indefinitely. So clearly that sends a signal, as President Trump said just a moment ago on your newscast, that Iran is the problem. But there is a solution here, which is the Abraham Accords. And what a lot of people may not realize is the Abraham Accords means peace with your neighbors. What President Trump is doing is going to transform the Middle East in a way that we haven't seen in over 100 years. You have Lebanon, Syria, and Saudi Arabia. I arrived in Israel today. I'm meeting with the American ambassador, Mike Huckabee, this Wednesday at 2 o'clock. And I'm meeting with Israeli ministers in the next 2 days because big things are going on in the Middle East right now. And it's due to President Trump, because President Trump showed extraordinary leadership and courage in challenging Iran in a way that no American president has ever done. And he successfully attacked Iran, and Iran was defeated by close coordination between the United States and its close ally, Israel. And the nations in the Middle East saw that they could count on America as a reliable ally, and they could work with America to transform the region. So this is groundbreaking. There's nothing like this that we've seen in our lifetime. And it's going to make dramatic changes in this part of the world that's going to uplift the life of people living in Arab countries that have been suffering so much.
As of 2023, the UAE had $35 billion in foreign investments in the U.S., supporting over 33,000 jobs. U.S. total goods trade with the UAE amounted to $34.4 billion in 2024, with America enjoying a $19.5 billion surplus, which is the third largest in the world. The $200 billion UAE deals build on the $600 billion in Saudi Arabia and $1.2 trillion in Qatar, coming days after another US-UK trade agreement, and a joint effort between America and China to promote fair trading practices.
And we must use this moment to do the same, deepening our partnerships with allies, old and new, from across Europe to meet the defence challenges of our age, to the United States, an indispensable ally for our economic and national security. As you know, talks with the US have been ongoing, and you'll hear more from me about that later today.
The US is an indispensable ally to the UK on our economic security and on our national security. And there's been really hard negotiations with the US over securing an economic deal for Britain since Keir Starmer went to the White House in February. Now, in that period, ministers like me have stepped back from offering a running commentary on those discussions or any timelines, and we've done that to give our negotiators the space to strike the deal that Britain needs. And so it's not for me to comment on that, I think, today, but it's for us to remind ourselves that the US is that indispensable ally for us on economic security and in the area that I lead on, of course, in defence.
We're looking more at a kind of pact on tariffs that would potentially help our biggest class of goods exports to the US, cars, and perhaps try to avoid more penalties for our second biggest category, pharmaceuticals. However, that is still the minority of the goods that we sell to the US. That 10% baseline tariff that the president introduced on most goods sold into the US may be set to remain. And don't forget, the majority of what we sell from the UK to the US is services, and that's a growing share. So in economic terms, actually, this probably wouldn't move the dial very much. And there's all sorts of details to be hammered out, because what we understand we're likely to get is sort of a very broad framework here. But as Henry was saying here, that's, the symbolic importance of this is crucial, really, because we are first in line to any kind of deal, even though it's kind of a mini deal, what we're talking about here. And that, when you're talking about the future relationship and the most important trading relationship for the UK with any individual country, is absolutely front and centre.
The devil is in the detail of these agreements. Well, this economic prosperity deal is only 5 pages long, so not much detail, but let's see if we can find any devil. It starts with some broad commitments, 3 of them, to grow the quality and volume of beneficial trade, to remove barriers and deliver an enduring economic partnership. All laudable, but there is a kicker. This document does not constitute a legally binding agreement. Let's see what it does say for certain. It agrees that the two sides will try and reduce tariffs on both sides, and we've heard about the big measures on that. To start with, beef tariffs disappearing. 13,000 tonnes of beef can now flow tariff-free in either direction. That's about 50,000 steaks a year. Car tariffs too dropped from that ruinous 25% to 10% on the first 100,000 vehicles. Steel tariffs have dropped too, but there's an interesting bit of language here about steel. The UK will work to promptly meet US requirements on the security of the supply chains of steel intended for export to the US. What does that mean? It looks like it's recruiting the UK's help in keeping out Chinese steel that undercuts US producers. The government has insisted today America does not have a veto on future trade agreements regarding China. There's interesting language too on pharmaceuticals. We know Donald Trump is considering tariffs on medicines. That's hugely important for the UK. It's an £8 billion export market. The deal says the two sides will work to agree preferential treatment outcomes on pharmaceuticals, but the UK confirms it will endeavour to improve the overall environment for pharmaceutical companies. What could that mean? Well, the long-standing complaint from the industry is that the NHS underpays for drugs it uses its size of monopoly to drive down prices. So this might be the start of the negotiation in which the price of relief from future US tariffs is agreeing to push up the NHS medicines bills. That's one to watch. Now, from pharmaceuticals to farmers, because on top of that deal on beef, there's some language on agriculture worth looking at. Both sides want to work constructively to enhance agricultural market access. Nothing wrong with that. Farmers on both sides of the Atlantic want access to those markets, but it's often been considered too complicated because of our food standards standards, the stuff that keeps out hormone-treated beef and chlorinated chicken. But these standards are still in the deal. The sanitary and phytosanitary standards must remain. Now, that's considered a real coup in government. I understand the Americans tried to roll those overs. They refused. And one of the reasons they're happy is because it means a deal with the EU is still on the table. So can we take all of that to the bank? Well, let's have a look at the last line of the agreement. Perhaps not yet. The US or the UK may terminate this arrangement by giving written notice to the other. So given the nature of this precedent, perhaps the sooner it's signed and sealed, the better.
We all know the great Prime Minister of the UK, and we just signed a document. This is... Sorry about that.
This is it. A very important document.
Little windy out here. Give me that little. We just signed it, and it's done. And so we have our trade agreement with the European Union, and it's a fair deal for both. Going to produce a lot of jobs, a lot of income, and we have many other ones coming. But you see, the level of enthusiasm is very good. But the relationship that we have is fantastic. So I just want to congratulate you.
Donald, thank you very much. This now implements on car tariffs and aerospace, our really important agreement. And so this is a very good day for both of our countries, a real sign of strength. So thank you again, Donald. A really important day for both of us.
Great people, great people.
Have you spoken to Prime Minister Netanyahu? When might you speak to him?
I've spoken to everybody.
What will you say?
Israel is doing very well, as you probably noticed. And I gave Iran 60 days, and they said no. And the 61st, you saw what happened. Day 61. So I'm in constant touch. And as I've been saying, I think a deal will be signed, or something will happen, but a deal will be signed. And I think Iran is foolish not to sign one. Look, Iran should have signed the deal.
If it would help bring Iran to the negotiating table, would you guarantee that the U.S. would not get involved militarily?
Well, I think Iran basically is at the negotiating table. They want to make a deal. And as soon as I leave here, we're going to be doing something. But I have to leave here. I have, this commitment. I have a lot of commitments. I have a commitment to a lot of countries, including the UK, where we just signed our deal.
I'm Ben Thompson, and we're going to start with that major trade deal between the United States and the European Union. US President Trump has described it as a good deal for everybody. Well, after make-or-break negotiations between Mr Trump and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen in Scotland, the pair agreed a US tariff on all EU goods of that 15%. It's half the 30% tariff that Mr Trump had threatened to implement starting on Friday. Well, Mr Trump said the EU would boost its investment in the US by $600 billion, including a vast investment in American military equipment. Also spending $750 billion on things like US energy, while Ursula von der Leyen said the investment over the next 3 years in American LNG, that's liquefied natural gas, oil and nuclear fuels, would help reduce European reliance on Russia for its power. But Mr Trump said a 50% tariff on steel and aluminium would stay in place. While discussions are continuing regarding any tariff exemptions for wines and spirits. Overall, though, both sides appear pleased with the deal.
I think it's great that we made a deal today instead of playing games and maybe not making a deal at all. I think it's, I'm going to let you say, but I think it's the biggest deal ever made. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
We have a deal. We have a trade deal between the two largest economies in the world. And it's a big deal. It's a huge deal. It will bring stability. It will bring predictability. That's very important for our businesses on both sides of the Atlantic.
That the EU will buy US energy, will buy US military equipment, and will also make investments in the US, $600 billion investments in the US, that has been said. So there's a lot, I think, that the US has extracted from the European Union. But still, for European business, this will be a huge relief that it's not a tit for tat and that it's 15% and not more. Critics of President Trump might say that he has used his leverage that he has when it comes to security policy. So the US has been in the past, NATO and the US has been a big guarantor of European security. And this obviously comes all in a mix. So Europe needs the US not just for trade, but also for the general security situation with the war in the continent of Europe, in Ukraine, and the threat that's being posed by Russia. So many would say that the US president has, in a way, strong-armed the EU in order to get these concessions.
For Trump, I think he thinks he's made a good deal, yeah, but he's quite aware of the difficulties with European Union ratification and the like. So, one way the United States government will look at this is sort of a European stay of execution, the idea that, we're going to give them the opportunity to get their act together on trade, just as we gave them the opportunity to get their act together on defense, which at least in the first blush seemed to be happening with NATO defense commitments and the like. But the difficulty from the European Union side, as I see it, is really kind of arms pulled out of sockets in two different directions. One on having to invest more in defense over a period of time, and the other having to advance more money into the United States over a period of time. So both of these things are going to make the low-growth Eurozone that much more difficult to grow. It's very much about geopolitics. People call this Trump's trade war, and my response always is no water carrying for the United States government. But Trump didn't start it, and it's not a trade war. It's fundamentally about geopolitics, and frankly, from the United States perspective, increasing interdependence between the United States and allies and major non-aligneds. So this is very much a geopolitical move on trade.
I think this looks like damage control from a European perspective, and it's very hard to see how Europe benefited from this deal. In fact, the only fact that Europe managed to do is to avoid a fully fledged trade war with escalations. But for Europe, this is clearly a bad thing. Just think where we were on tariffs at the start of the year. I think on average, we had a tariff rate of 2 to 3% on European goods from the US. So now we will be at 15%, plus we still have steel, aluminum. There is still the open question on pharmaceuticals. So this is a deal that will do some harm to the European economy. First reaction will be some kind of relief. This is like, you have prepared for a hurricane to come, and in the end, it was only a storm, but still with some damage. I think this will be the instant reaction. The longer-term reaction will clearly be that Europe is not out of the woods, that there are still some sectors that could see an escalation of trade tensions. Plus, we also know that a trade deal is only a deal once it's really signed, and this deal is not signed yet, neither by the U.S. side. Plus, in Europe, it also means a long ratification process. We need agreement from the European Parliament. We will have to get agreement from all national parliaments. So this is still a long process.
President Donald Trump and the EU have reached a trade deal, and now the focus turns to the world's second largest economy. Trade talks between the Trump administration and China are underway in Stockholm.
There may be more deals to come as China and U.S. officials meet today in Sweden.
But after agreeing to a 15% tariff on EU goods at talks in Scotland, Donald Trump's attention turns back to China. Trade teams from Washington and Beijing are set to resume negotiations in Stockholm on Monday. Few expect any developments on the scale of the European agreement, but it's widely expected that the pair will agree to another 90-day extension for their current truce on tariffs. Trump himself sounded optimistic.
And we're very close to a deal with China. We really sort of made a deal with China, but we'll see how that goes.
An extension of the truce would prevent a new round of tit-for-tat tariffs like that seen earlier in the year. It would also smooth the way for a meeting between Trump and Chinese Premier Xi Jinping. That's expected in late October or early November, and Trump has said he will soon decide whether to make a landmark trip to China. Previous rounds of trade talks between the two sides focused on de-escalating the triple-digit retaliatory tariffs that each had imposed. They have not so far tackled broader economic issues.
Yeah, well, we heard from Jamieson Greer, the U.S. trade representative, saying that basically they come into these discussions with China off of a big win on their trade negotiations with Japan, with the European Union, and as a consequence, they don't feel great pressure to strike a deal with China at the moment. We just had Scott Bessent and Jamieson Greer walk in right behind me there. We also had the Vice Premier of China just walk in about 30 or 40 minutes ago. Their meetings are now underway within the Prime Minister of Sweden's office, which he's sort of very kindly lent out for these trade negotiations. What we will have here, likely over the next 48 hours, are discussions about the panoply of issues that they disagree on trade and probably beyond. But before any of those issues get resolved in a permanent way, what they need to do is extend the runway for the trade truce that is currently in place between the United States and between China. The U.S. currently has 30% tariffs on China. That is down from the 125% tariffs that they did have when there was the escalating tensions between the two sides. They brought that down. That is supposed to expire on August the 12th. So number one priority for the negotiators in those rooms is to extend that runway and then to start talking about the broader issues, the overcapacity that China sends out to the rest of the world, to the United States, other issues such as the continued purchase of Russian and Iranian crude oil, the issue of TikTok. Trump has said that there is a buyer in the United States. That still needs side-offs from the Chinese side. But as usual with the Trump administration, the way into the conversation is through the trade plank, but there are a panoply of different issues that they want to discuss with the Chinese.
Delegations from both countries concluded 2 days of talks in Stockholm and described the exchanges as constructive, agreeing to continue working towards extending a 90-day tariff truce, which will hit an August 12th deadline. China's trade negotiator said both sides agreed to that extension, which temporarily suspends some of the trade and export restrictions they place on each other. At one point, tariff rates had hit the triple digits, which in effect would have completely stopped trade between the world's two biggest economies. Well, the U.S. side wasn't as definitive when they spoke to media. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said an extension would be up to Donald Trump, who will be briefed on the talks this Wednesday.
President Xi and President Trump want to meet in October and November. And the Chinese tradition is they don't work things out at the table with President Xi and the foreign leader. They want everything worked out ahead of time. So this may take some time, but frankly, the U.S. has some leverage here. I think it's good for President Trump to have finished the Japan and EU deals. That gives some help to the U.S. side. But this is complicated because the Chinese are going to ask for an end or a freezing of U.S. technology constraints on China. And that's going to be, I hope that's going to be difficult for the Trump administration to agree to. You saw that the Trump administration agreed to NVIDIA selling H20 chips to China. There are some reports this morning that the Chinese are asking the U.S. to freeze all technology restrictions by the U.S. on China. I think that would be a great mistake from a national security standpoint, because we don't want the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, to be acquiring the most advanced American technology to outcompete the U.S. military. To me, that's the biggest issue in these trade talks. You know, our most important national security interest is not being overtaken by the People's Liberation in power in the next 10 years. And as AI and other technologies are militarized, as they certainly shall be, we don't want to be the second most powerful military in the Indo-Pacific. And so that's a national security concern that I frankly felt had been agreed to by Republicans and Democrats over the last couple of years. There was bipartisan support for the restrictions on advanced semiconductor technologies that President Biden put on China. So that's a big Chinese ask in these negotiations as we go forward.
Although we've seen the Chinese retaliate very effectively with the ban that they put on rare earths minerals, with magnets, with some of these things, and what they can do in return. We're pretty tied up with all of the chips being made and manufactured in Taiwan. There's so many different things that are at play here. I hear you, and it's happening with the backdrop of, probably the Chinese that were behind this break-in to Microsoft with its SharePoint 0 days, too. So there's a lot of things happening between the two. What takes the forefront, security or trade?
Well, I think for the United States, it has to be security. Obviously, we want our tech companies to do well, but there have to be some constraints on what we sell to China. Becky, an additional factor here is even if the two sides, and there's a truce right now, can agree to a final deal, what will happen to the sectoral tariffs that President Biden put on China? 100% on Chinese EVs, 50% on semiconductors, 25% on lithium batteries. I would imagine that the Trump administration would want to hold on to those, to continue to apply them. Otherwise, U.S. automobile manufacturers will be engulfed by BYD and other lower-priced and very high-quality Chinese exports. So I don't think this is a negotiation that can be finished in a week or two. This is extremely complicated. But I think, President Trump has been right to be tough-minded with the Chinese, because if you think about forced technology transfer, IP theft, what the Chinese are doing to keep U.S. companies out of the Chinese market, this has to be a tough-nosed negotiation, and it may take a little bit more time.
We're still waiting to hear from ongoing negotiations with South Korea and India. For instance, these talks and the subsequent easing of threatened tariff rates has moved the needle a bit on economic growth projections for this year.
Kind of bully India into buying more defense equipment with them. Well, the Indian administration, the entire Indian historical thinking will have alarm bells ringing, and this will make sure that India actually doesn't invest more with the US. Anand Narasimhan is also joining us. Anand, the other friction point is buying Russian oil. And, on that too, for the last 2 years plus, India has made it very clear, one, they're not breaking any rules, first of all, and it was always indicated that when the price control kicked in, India could buy oil from whoever they wished to.
Yes, Shivani, and good afternoon to our viewers. See, Bharat was not buying more than 1% of oil from Russia till before the Russia-Ukraine war happened. And at that time, at a time when there was war, there was disruption, Iran had a lot of sanctions and it could not sell oil. Russia discounted its prices. And for Bharat to be able to mitigate the post-COVID flux and perhaps rise, there is a reason why we in India right now are not paying more than 90-95 rupees in most of the cities across the place, except for Bengaluru perhaps and Mumbai, where local taxes and octroi, etc. Add to the and cesses add to the price. But it's within 100 rupees a litre of petrol and diesel. But if you look at Europe, if you look at some of the other countries which have been impacted because of the Russia-Ukraine crisis, the oil prices have really soared. And it has a direct impact on inflation, on consumer prices, etc. for product prices. So Bharat has said that we're going to look at, and another thing it has done is it also helped shore up our forex reserves. So it's in strategic interest that a decision like this has been taken. If America or any other nation is willing to sell at the same prices as Russia is selling, then Bharat will buy from them. So you talked about price control, and that's true. But who is an America to tell India who it should buy its oil from? And how can they decide? How can a Trump decide? See, one, and this is something that Union Minister for Commerce and Industries, Piyush Goyal, told me on the sidelines of the CETA, or the Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement that was signed with the UK. And he, on the sidelines, said a deal cannot be one-sided. You cannot bully a nation into doing a deal because that nation is not going to be happy about it. And there is no point making false commitments. See, one of the things that Donald Trump is irked about is the trade deficit, $45 billion worth of trade deficit, which he believes is not fair to America, that America's exposure to Indian exports is far greater than India's exposure to American imports. And one item or one aspect which could have helped mitigate that was the purchase of defense equipment, because he wanted India to buy more defense equipment, military equipment, and two places where we need to really up the ante is aerial firepower, fifth generation aircrafts, and also naval fleet and naval power, both of which Bharat is working on its own indigenous prototypes and indigenous offerings, but that will take another 10 years. So in the short term, in these 10 years, what can fill? And we need at least 3 or 4 squadrons. What or who can do that? So it's the Rafale, it's the Sukhoi 57 or the Su 57, or it's the F-35. And these are the fifth generation aircrafts that could match for us. Now India is saying, if you are going to bully us, and if you are going to try and push us into a corner as a nation, here you go. I've got the money, I've got the requirement, but I'll look at a nation that is fair to me, and it is giving me a deal where it's a win-win for both sides. So this is also telling Trump that you're bullying, you're staring down. Bharat is not going to work because we're going to stare you back, and this is going to hurt. His MAGA base right now, Shivani and viewers, is at its lowest in terms of popularity and approval ratings. His Ipsos ratings have dropped. He's at 40%, and the MAGA base is also not very happy. So Trump has to go back with a win. He may be angling and crying and throwing a tantrum about a Nobel Peace Prize, etc. But at the end of the day, unless he's able to create more than 100,000, 200,000 jobs, it's not going to help. And more economists are saying this matter is also in the courts, whether or not he can use tariff as a bullying tactic. And this is going to be counterproductive very, very soon. So Trump also realizes that he can stare down, bully and browbeat only to a certain extent. Beyond that, nations are not going to, and they're going to look at other options. And importantly, with this UK trade deal, the UK market is a huge potential for Indian exporters. And by September, if the European trade deal also falls into place, then Indian exporters will have a huge market opening there and possibilities opening up and opportunities opening up.
Yeah.
And we'll continue to buy oil and perhaps even Sukhois from Russia.
It took President Biden nearly 4 years to achieve $1 trillion in investments, something President Trump has done within months. Saildrone CEO Richard Jenkins, in responding to the trade deals signed in the UAE, said, "This groundbreaking deal unites the best of American innovation with a partner committed to regional security and stability. We are proud to play our part in President Trump's vision for regional maritime superiority to enable the safe passage of trade and the interception of illegal or destabilizing activity throughout the Middle East region." Occidental President and CEO Vicky Holub said, "We are proud to participate in President Trump's visit to the UAE, where we signed a strategic energy enhancing agreement with our long-standing partner ADNOC, whose investment company XRG will consider making a $500 million investment in the United States, alongside a grant award from the U.S. DOE, to advance Occidental's South Texas direct air capture hub. Development of DAC is essential for ensuring our country's long-term energy security." We also signed an agreement with ADNOC to examine the expansion of production at our successful joint venture energy development project in the UAE's Shah gas field, using U.S. technologies. Oracle CEO Safra Catz said, "In support of President Trump's vision and commitment to peace through prosperity and the Abraham Accords, the greatest diplomatic accomplishment in modern history. We are pleased to continue to invest in and deliver cloud and AI technology to power the UAE's most important systems. Our Oracle Cloud infrastructure footprint, Oracle Alloy sovereign cloud partnerships, and groundbreaking work in healthcare will help accelerate the UAE's technology modernization efforts and advance patient health outcomes. Together, the UAE and US will redefine what is possible in technology, business, and healthcare." Boeing President and CEO Kelly Ortberg said, "As one of the launch customers for the 777X, Etihad is a valued customer, and we are grateful for the airline's continued confidence in Boeing. We appreciate the support of the President and his administration as we partner with Etihad to enable their growth while sustaining highly skilled U.S. manufacturing jobs." A Northrop Grumman spokesperson said, "Just as we have invested in the UAE, such as Northrop Grumman's grant to the American Community School in Abu Dhabi, we welcome increased partnership and investment by the UAE in our world-class defense sector. This historic trip will increase U.S. jobs and economic strength." Lockheed Martin Chairman, President, and CEO Jim Taiclet said, "Through President Trump's leadership, Lockheed Martin and the United Arab Emirates are building on 50 years of partnership to strengthen regional defense with advanced air power, integrated air and missile defense, precision radars, and next-generation command and control. Our high-tech innovation benefits both nations by sustaining American manufacturing jobs and driving industrial growth." Parsons Chair, President, and CEO Carrie Smith said, "Parsons is proud to be a part of President Trump's initiatives to strengthen strategic relations in the UAE. As a global infrastructure leader with a presence in the Emirates spanning nearly 5 decades, Parsons has leveraged our global experience to build trusted partnerships and deliver critical infrastructure. supported by 2,700 employees across the country, and have successfully completed more than 3,000 projects. We have worked on some of the UAE's premier projects, including the region's first metro line in Dubai, the iconic Infinity Bridge, Dubai Municipality's strategic sewerage tunnel project, the Sharjah and Abu Dhabi international airports, and Etihad Rail, the region's first high-speed rail network. Our unwavering focus on the country's future is underlined by a combination of a dedicated team of experts and our understanding of the local environment and vision, reinforcing our commitment to building this nation and supporting its transformation. Baker Hughes CEO Lorenzo Simonelli said, "We congratulate President Trump on his historic visit to the United Arab Emirates, a key moment that underscores the enduring partnership between two nations committed to innovation, progress, and shared prosperity. As we look to the future, energy will remain central to economic growth and broader cooperation that supports stability and opportunity for both countries, and Baker Hughes remains steadfast in our dedication to help both nations meet their goals." The whole President Trump tour hasn't lacked its fair share of critics, with a group of senators seeking to halt the $3.5 billion weapons deals with Qatar and UAE, citing concerns that the deals will benefit the Trump families personally. Particularly, the legislators are seeking to block the already approved $1.6 billion sale of Chinook helicopters and equipment, F-16 aircraft equipment, and parts to repair Apache, Chinook, and Black Hawk helicopters to the UAE. The lawmakers also seek to block $1.9 billion in sales to Qatar of MQ-9V Predator drones and associated equipment, which was approved by the State Department in March.
Mr. President. The senator from Connecticut.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'm bringing before the Senate an opportunity for us to take a stand against the corruption of American foreign policy. The Senate will take a vote in just a moment to deny the President the ability to move forward with two arms sales, one to Qatar and one to the United Arab Emirates. I believe that this Senate should join Republicans and Democrats together in saying that any country that's willing to pay the President personally, to enrich our President personally, in order to receive favorable treatment from the United States of America in its foreign policy, or to receive national security secrets from the United States of America, shouldn't be able to do business as usual with this Congress or with this country. And so I want to tell you a story that is heartbreaking, as it is aggravating. So we give the American president enormous power, and particularly we give the president enormous power when it comes to managing the foreign relations of this country. The president decides where we send arms. The president gets to negotiate peace treaties. The president decides how millions of troops are deployed all around the world. And we trust that the president is going to use those powers for good, that the president is going to use those authorities to protect the United States of America. But they are vast powers. They are immense powers. And so there is always the potential that those powers are going to be used for corrupt purposes, that instead of using those authorities in order to gain concessions from other nations that benefit the broad American public or benefit American national security, the president may use those powers in order to enrich himself personally. Our founding fathers actually thought a lot about this problem because they had watched their monarch, they had watched the King of England use the powers that he had in order not to protect the British people, but to amass enormous wealth. He used those powers both to control dissent and protest domestically, but he also used those powers in order to compel other nations and actors inside the empire to pay him tribute.
The legislators accused President Trump of engaging in corruption by accepting favors in exchange for deals, citing news that Emirates investment firm MGX was set to use stablecoin, a cryptocurrency whose value is pegged to another one associated with the Trump family, to make a $2 billion investment in Binance. The Trump family is reported to have made millions off niche currencies such as the Trump meme coin following Trump's return to the White House.
In just a few hours, President Trump will head to an exclusive MAGA Inc. dinner party at the Trump National Golf Club in Virginia. Other media outlets have reported that the dinner costs $1.5 million per person and will also feature venture capitalist David Sachs. So MAGA Inc. is a super PAC that supports Trump, but it is raising ethical concerns from watchdog groups.
Trump's companies have been selling several different kinds of crypto coins. A meme coin is a token that you buy because you hope to profit off of it if it becomes popular enough to sell to someone else. While where it's the Trump coin or the president of Argentina's meme coin, they are rife with self-dealing and insider trading. Trump has made at least $350 million from this meme coin so far. He plans to sell as many as 800 million more of these coins after he's increased their price by announcing these dinners for its top buyers. In effect, Trump is a pay-to-play scheme that allows his biggest buyers in his coin to meet him in person and potentially influence him. And even possibly foreign nationals may see this as a way to bribe the president.
So the Trump family also controls a crypto firm. So tell us about that.
So World Liberty Financial is a company led by Trump and his family, and his organizations own 60% of that company, and they receive 75% of its revenues. Just last week, that company announced a $2 billion deal with the brother of the president of the United Arab Emirates. That money will be used to invest in Binance, a Chinese-founded crypto firm that Trump has canceled a federal enforcement action against. World Liberty Financial also states that in a separate crypto scheme, it has made more than $550 million. The president's meme coin and other crypto businesses have made almost $3 billion, but that's only the money we know about. There's an opaque web of Trump crypto and non-crypto businesses, including Trump Media Group and Truth Social, that make it incredibly hard to know how many coins he's sold or to whom, or whether he might have investments in other crypto companies.
From a crypto ball before the inauguration featuring Snoop Dogg to a new crypto task force just launched today by the SEC, supporters of the digital currency are hoping the president's promised golden age extends to them.
The reign of terror against crypto is over.
And now, after using his Trump brand to sell everything from steaks and vodka to sneakers and Bibles, the president promoting his company's newly launched Trump meme coin.
I don't know much about it other than I launched it. I heard it was very successful.
Those tokens, usually pegged to internet trends or celebrity endorsers, holding only the value traders put in it. At one point, the Trump coin rocketing from $6.50 to more than $72. Today, trading closer to $45 a coin. A similar coin, named for Melania, launched just yesterday.
There was this promise that Trump would usher in a time of at least thoughtful debate. What the concern now is that launching a meme coin is one of those corners of crypto that is taken less seriously.
He has the power now not only to be making money, but he's actually going to be in position to be making determinations around that entire sector.
I'm laying out my plan to ensure that the United States will be the crypto capital of the planet and the Bitcoin superpower of the world.
For the president, an evolution from just 3 years ago.
Bitcoin, it just seems like a scam.
President Trump pointing to the influence of his son, Barron.
Barron knows so much about this. Right. Eric, and Barron's a young guy, but he knows it.
He says that this new national crypto reserve will include Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a trio of high volatility tokens, Solana, XRP, and Cardano. He's calling it a move to elevate the industry after what the president described as years of corrupt attacks under the Biden administration. Now, unlike traditional reserves of gold, petroleum, or grain, commodities accumulated for strategic security, this reserve would more closely resemble an active portfolio of speculative assets. The shift in language from stockpile to reserve also suggests the U.S. may actively acquire and manage cryptocurrencies rather than just holding seized tokens. Now, the crypto market, coming off its worst month since 2022, reacted instantly. Bitcoin and Ethereum surged over 10%, while Cardano spiked as much as 70%. Now, prices are coming back down, but still, we're seeing investors getting back into long positions. And attention now really turns to Friday's first ever White House Crypto Summit, where the president, along with his crypto czar, David Sachs, regulators, and industry leaders will talk next steps. We'll be watching to see whether the president shares a buying strategy or plans to push this through without congressional approval.
Thank you, Mr. President. On a related subject, many Democrats have said that they are not going to support crypto bills in Congress only because of you and your family's personal crypto ventures. And these votes are in some cases needed to pass. Are you open to the idea of pulling away from your personal crypto ventures just for the next few years if that helps get these crypto bills passed in the next few months?
Well, it's a very funny thing, crypto. So I became a fan of crypto, and to me it's an industry. I view it as an industry, and I'm president. And if we didn't have it, China would, or somebody else would, but most likely China. China would love to. And we've dominated that industry. It's a big industry, by the way. In fact, when the stock market went down recently, crypto and Bitcoin and all of that went down much less than anybody else as a group. And we've created a very powerful industry, and that's much more important than anything that we invest in. We invest in it, but really that was an industry that wasn't doing particularly well. I got involved with it a couple of years ago, and before the second term. I got involved before I decided to run. I only decided to run because I saw what was happening, and Biden was incompetent, and the administration was crooked and incompetent. And I was in Bitcoin then, not knowing if I was going to do it a third time. So it's become amazing. I mean, it's the jobs that it produces.
The Biden family and their business associates received $20 million in payments from foreign actors in places like Russia, China, Ukraine, and Romania.
More than $20 million went to Joe Biden's family, paid by Ukrainians and Russians and Kazakhs and Chinese communists.
He used the power of his office as the vice president of this country to secure massive amounts of money for his own family.
What exactly did the Bidens do to receive the millions and millions of dollars from our enemies around the world?
We don't like corrupt politicians like Joe Biden. You see, they just found him $5 billion went to him.
Imagine if that was, your name was Hunter Biden. Except Hunter's
I
name
wish
was your
my name was Hunter Biden. I could go abroad, make millions off of my father's presidency. I'd be a really rich guy. It would be incredible.
You've made a couple of comments this morning. You said money laundering. You said bribery. You said influence peddling. Obviously, Mr. Chairman, these are very, very serious charges. And the White House is denying it. How will you prove it?
Yeah. Well, we're going to present the American people with a report, hopefully very soon. And there are going to be a lot of footnotes in this report.
Hillary took millions from Kuwait, Qatar, Oman, and many other countries. 25 million from Saudi Arabia, 5 million from Morocco, 5 million from Oman, Bahrain, Algeria, Qatar. Saudi Arabia paid Bill Clinton a lot of money to make a speech, and then got an arms deal from Hillary and her State Department that they were unable to get. The nation of Qatar also kicked in $1 million for Bill Clinton's birthday party. So nice.
Trump's family is doing billions in business in all three countries that he is visiting this week. Some of the deals going on right now: Saudi Arabia, 2 luxury towers, Live Golf Partnership, Qatar, Golf Club and Villas, UAE, luxury hotel, cryptocurrency deal.
Including here in Saudi Arabia, where there is a Trump-branded tower on the way in Jeddah. In Qatar, where the president is heading tomorrow, his son Eric recently unveiled a new beach villa and golf community. His third stop on this trip, the United Arab Emirates, which is home to the major investments in one of the Trump family newest ventures, the Trump's crypto company, World Liberty Financial.
President Trump's, quote, corruption tour of the Middle East. This was him landing in Saudi Arabia. Separately, the Trump family organization continues to pursue billions of dollars in real estate and associated deals in that country and region.
The gentleman that's right before me, he's your greatest representative. And if I didn't like him, I'd get out of here so fast. You know that, don't you? He knows me well.
I do. I like him a lot. I like him too much. That's why we give so much, you know? Too much. I like you too much. Great guy. Oh, what I do for the Crown Prince. Leaders of a modern and rising Middle East. So exciting. So exciting. Mohammed, you sleep at night? How do you sleep? Huh? Just thinking. What a job. He tosses and turns like some of us. Tosses and turns all night. How do I make it even better all night?
I see all these negotiations going on in the Middle East, and then I don't know when these buildings were approved or when these deals got done, but then I also see like, oh, there's a brand new hotel going up in Dubai or Abu Dhabi and another one going up in Doha, I think. And I'm like, did these like just get done also with the deals that just happened over there, or was this earlier?
No, I don't know.
You don't?
I've not made $1 in the Middle East, not one.
Well, I mean, you're a lot more on the inside than I am. And
No. I'm just a visitor and a traveler and a watcher. But I don't, there's
that stuff kind of worries me. It's
well, it seems like corruption. Yeah.
Per NBC News, the Trump franchise is expanding in the Middle East. They signed deals to build a Trump International Hotel and Tower in Dubai, a golf resort in Doha with Qatar's Sovereign Wealth Fund's real estate arm, a Trump Tower in Jeddah, and a hotel under construction in Muscat.
Trump is meeting with Middle Eastern leaders, engaging in diplomacy, and building Trump buildings in the Middle East. Our previous presidents were leveling buildings in the Middle East, so I'd say this is an improvement.
When Tucker Carlson goes against you, there's some foul.
I don't know that he was
okay.
going against.
He went against.
Saying it might be corrupt, and I agree, it might be corrupt. We are in an unprecedented situation, where yes, the leader of our country is also a very successful businessman with conflicting business interests all over the globe, and
that may invite foreign influence over our decisions in our country, but that's fine with you.
Now we have to play the foreign influence game.
I think
I want to get along with other countries. I want peace, prosperity, and trade. And it seems like that's what Donald Trump wants to. I don't want to do things that just benefit the president for the bottom line that are contrary to the interests of the American people, but I think what's generally in the interest of the American people is doing deals and building things. If the American people had grave concerns about Trump using his position to enrich himself personally, Democrats called plenty of attention to that. Donald Trump was reelected anyway. I think the people just said, well, we're not concerned enough about it. I don't know what other check on it there can be.
I just want to say he's building golf courses. He's invested in cryptocurrency. These are all things that he's working with the Middle East on. And so he is not like recused from everything that his son is doing. Trump International is a property that he stepped away from to be president. But you're telling me that his son had no dialogue?
Jared Kushner.
Huh?
You're talking about Jared Kushner.
Yes, Jared.
Yeah, Jared Kushner is, I think, not a positive influence on Trump and MAGA. In fact, I think Jared Kushner had too much involvement over foreign policy in the first administration. This was not to the liking of a lot of hardcore Trump MAGA supporters, because Jared Kushner is a former Democrat with much more internationalist and interventionist leanings. It is Jared Kushner that had the plan to eject everyone from Gaza and claim the land for, his own business interests or Israel or the U.S. or someone else. It's a terrible plan. That's a Jared Kushner idea. That's not a Donald Trump idea. So I hear you on not doing things just because Jared Kushner wants to do them. I'm all for that.
President Trump has decided that he is going to use the powers that we have given him to demand the same kind of tribute the kings and monarchs demanded. And the reason that we have to stand together today to vote against these arms sales to Qatar and UAE is because, unfortunately, these two countries, who are admittedly often allies, important allies of the United States, have decided to comply with President Trump's request to pay him that tribute. Shortly before the president went to the Middle East, he did not dispense to the region his Secretary of State. Instead, he dispensed to the region his business partners. Just before the president made his first major foreign trip to the UAE, Saudi Arabia and to Qatar, he sent his son and their business partner, who not coincidentally happens to be the son of Trump's Middle East envoy, to the United Arab Emirates. And their request was pretty simple. Their request was not that the UAE do something that would be in the interests of collective American security. Their request was that UAE invest $2 billion in Donald Trump's new crypto business, in particular his stablecoin venture. This is the President of the United States going to the UAE and asking a foreign government to invest $2 billion in his personal business. The company is called World Liberty Financial. On World Liberty Financial's website, it says the company is owned, the majority of the company is owned by Donald J. Trump. Now, this was a pretty exceptional request to make because his crypto business was brand new. At the time, it was a pretty minor player. And so a $2 billion investment from a country like UAE would vault World Liberty Financial into the stratosphere. And in fact, it did. When the UAE complied with that corrupt request, World Liberty Financial, the stable coin that it issues, became the 5th biggest stable coin in the world overnight. Now, the UAE felt like it had to comply with the president's request because they had things they wanted from the United States. First, they wanted a continuation of arms sales, including the sale of Chinook helicopters that we will be voting on today. But they wanted something more specific, something that they weren't able to get from the first Trump administration or from the Biden administration. They wanted some of our most vital, most significant national security secrets. They wanted to be able to get their hands on computer chip technology, the kind of technology that will power the next generation of AI. Now, we as a nation, again, based on bipartisan consensus, had been unwilling to give UAE that technology because it is a fairly open secret that the UAE has a very close, very cozy relationship with China. And there was a very real worry, there still is a real worry, that that technology, if transferred to the UAE, would be quickly transferred to China, allowing China to be able to outpace us, to outrun us in the race to advanced AI. But the UAE knew that there was a way to get what they wanted. There was a way to change the policy of the United States, and it was a $2 billion investment in Trump's business. And not coincidentally, just weeks after they announced that they were putting $2 billion into Trump's crypto business, his father, who, again, not coincidentally, is Trump's Middle East envoy, went back to the region and announced that they would be moving forward with the transfer of these computer chips to the UAE.
The senators have also expressed fears surrounding UAE weapons getting to the hands of the Rapid Support Forces fighting in Sudan, which is allegedly backed by the UAE.
He essentially did what is called coup proofing, in which he was concerned about any security institution being strong enough to overthrow and challenge him. So he allowed basically a proliferation of different armed groups and centers of power within the country. He, of course, ruled Sudan for 30 years, starting from 1989. And near the end of his time in power, before he was overthrown by the Sudanese revolution in 2019, the Sudanese security forces had grown really fragmented. He'd let the official army weaken quite a bit. There was a lot of tribal militia. These two main actors, the army and the rapid support forces, were able to collude, now successfully for about 4 years to stay in power themselves. But there was always that core tension about who was the top dog between them.
A civil war-hit African country clashed with the UAE at the United Nations Security Council. Khartoum accused Abu Dhabi of providing arms and other support to the paramilitary RSF and further fueling violence in Sudan. The Sudanese ambassador to the UN said that the UAE must stay away from Sudan and that this was the first requirement that would allow stability in the country.
Whoever wants to create peace in Sudan must first come with pure intentions, and the United Arab Emirates is the state that is sponsoring terrorism, that is a racist kind of terrorism, and this has been proven by the report issued by your own council.
Sudan's ambassador accused the UAE of assisting RSF forces through militias in Chad, southern Libya, and Central Africa. Backing up its claim of Emirati interference, Sudan also submitted copies of half a dozen UAE passports that it says were found on the battlefield in Khartoum. He also claimed that wounded RSF fighters were airlifted to Dubai for medical treatment. Khartoum called on the council to openly condemn the Gulf state.
We have submitted to you, Mr. President, a week ago, 6 UAE passports that we found in Khartoum in joint operations perpetrated by the Rapid Response Forces, and you have not published this as we have asked. We did not steal these passports from the suitcases of UAE citizens in the UAE. We found them in the heart of the battlefield.
We see this as a shameful abuse by one of the warring parties of Sudan of this council, using this platform to spread false allegations against the UAE, to distract from the grave violations that are happening on the ground. There will be no military victory or a military settlement of the conflict in Sudan. The only way to settle will be through the negotiating table.
The Sudanese army has accused Abu Dhabi of supporting the RSF. In April, Sudan requested an emergency Security Council meeting on its accusations. However, that request was never fulfilled. On Tuesday, Sudanese ambassador took advantage of a regularly scheduled meeting on the situation in Sudan and launched a verbal attack on the UAE. The UNSC, without naming any country last week, urged the UN member states to refrain from external interference. It also called the nations to respect of an arms embargo on Sudan. Reports, on the other hand, have pointed out Iran's role as well in aiding the Sudanese army. Videos of attacks carried out by the army have shown that they were carried out with the help of Iranian-made drones. The UN has accused both Iran and the UAE of violating the arms embargo to Sudan that bars the supply of weapons to both the warring sides.